On January 26, 1966, Australia Day, 3 siblings disappeared from Glenelg Beach in Adelaide, South Australia. Jane, age 9, Arnna, age 7, and Grant, age 4, were last seen around 10 a.m. after taking a short bus ride from their home in Somerton Park. Despite extensive investigations, no trace of the children has ever been found. The case sparked one of the largest missing persons investigations in Australian history. Over the decades, numerous suspects and theories have emerged, but the mystery remains unsolved. Jim and Nancy Beaumont married in December 1955, settling into their comfortable middle-class life in Somerton Park, a seaside suburb just south of Adelaide's bustling centre. Jim, a former Royal Australian Air Force reservist and part-time taxi driver, ran a small electrical contracting business from a makeshift workshop at the rear of their weatherboard home on Harding Street. Nancy, born Nancy Ellis, managed the household with precision, organising garden parties for the local Methodist church and hosting weekly afternoon teas. The children were intelligent and kind-natured. Jane, being the eldest, doted on her younger siblings and took the big sister role very seriously. In 1960s Australia, children unfolded in a world that felt markedly freer and more trusting than today. Suburban streets were quiet and familiar, and it wasn't unusual for children to spend entire afternoons playing unsupervised in parks, riding bikes, or wandering down to the local milk bar. Families often left their doors unlocked, windows open to a breeze, and children, like the Beaumonts, were trusted to take short bus rides or visit the beach alone. At about 9:45 a.m., Jane, Arnna, and Grant Beaumont caught the number 11 bus from the corner of Harding Street and Military Road in Somerton Park, bound for Glenelg Beach, just a 5-minute ride and a rite of passage for local kids at the height of summer. By mid-morning, at least 4 witnesses spotted them playing under the sprinkler fountains at Collie Reserve, their laughter mingling with the surf's roar. Around noon, Jane used a £1 note, far more than her mother had given her, to buy cakes at a bakery on Mosley Street. Nancy Beaumont expected her children to be home by 1 p.m, but when they failed to appear on both the noon and 2 p.m. bus services, alarm bells rang. Jim Beaumont, who was away up north on business, returned early from the sales trip about 3 p.m, hoping to surprise the children by coming home early. He was met by Nancy saying the children weren't home by the beach, so Jim raced to Glenelg Beach only to find no sign of the trio. At 5:30 p.m, the parents filed a missing persons report at the Glenelg police station, and as the hours ticked by, it grew more and more concerning by the police and family members. Within hours of the missing persons report being filed at the Glenelg police station on the evening of the 26th of January 1966, South Australia's police launched what became the state's largest search operation to date. Initially, the police thought that there were 3 possibilities. The children had been kidnapped, they were hiding, or they had suffered a tragic misadventure, such as drowning or buried under a collapsed sand dune. Officers, aided by police cadets and volunteers, meticulously combed Glenelg Beach, the adjacent sandhills, and Collie Reserve. Stormwater drains and sewers were also opened and flushed, and the local Patawaloga boat haven and surrounding waterways were drained. They were hoping to find something, a piece of clothing or some kind of evidence, only to find nothing each time. At the Glenelg police station, officers were overwhelmed by reports and tips of the children's sightings. There was a queue out the door and every single person was to be interviewed. The police station was a small one and was quickly overwhelmed by the sheer amount of information coming in. An elderly couple reported that they saw an older man with the children that day on the beach, acting friendly, almost as if he was their father. It is widely believed by the police that the man took the opportunity to steal their money and act as a white knight by offering to give them some of his money. It is believed they went willingly with the man. Around lunchtime, they were seen again by a local postman in town with the man heading towards a bakery. This is why the police believe the man offered them some of his own money, as now Jane pays for some food in the bakery, ordering some cakes and, quote, a pie for the man. She pays with a £1 note, which was a lot of money at the time, and one her mother had not given her when she left home. Her mother had given her 8 shillings to get lunch. And that is the last sighting of the 3 children to this day. By November that year, 9 months after the disappearance, the police were desperate. They flew in famous Dutch clairvoyant Gerard Croiset to assist in the investigation. Croiset claimed he had had a vision of the Beaumont children and arrived in Adelaide to an overwhelming reception of anticipating people, though his leads proved fruitless. On the last day before he was due to fly back home, someone had told him about this warehouse that had recently been dug up and re-cemented, and that's where the children were buried, but nothing was found. Jim and Nancy Beaumont were subjected to constant harassment by the public, receiving prank calls and letters in the mail accusing them of doing something to their own children. The parents kept their rooms the same way, never touching them, hoping that the children would return. No criminal case in Australia has attracted as many suspects as the Beaumont children disappearance. As the years passed, these evil men did fall under suspicion. The infamous child killer Derek Percy, linked to the death of 9 children, convicted murderer and suspected serial killer James O'Neill, scoutmaster and pedophile Anthony Monroe, and the most depraved killers in Australia, Bevan von Einem. Although no evidence has ever been found that these men were linked to the Beaumont disappearance. In 1966, a police artist drew an image of the man believed to be the one with the children on that day. Based on consistent eyewitness reports, he is around 6 feet tall, athletic build, fair to light wavy brown hair with a long face. Bearing a strong resemblance to the sketch was Harry Phipps. Phipps was a millionaire factory owner and a father of 2 living close to the Glenelg Beach. His eldest son, Hayden Phipps, gave an interview to the police in 2013 after being convinced by his second wife, Angela. Angela gave an interview with 7 News long after the disappearance, stating that the first time Hayden spoke to her about the children was when a program came on the television about the case, and Hayden stated he always thought his father had something to do with it. Where Harry Phipps and his family lived was not far from the beach and the bakery, about a block or 2 away. Hayden was 15 years old when the Beaumont children disappeared and stated to the police that he saw the children enter their family home and never come back out. Harry Phipps was not even a suspect at the time. He owned a successful business, Castalloy, in nearby Plympton, which made metal castings for the car industry. In 1983, Harry was awarded the prestigious Australian Medal for Services to Industry award. He was a powerful and connected man, one that flew under the radar. To the outside world, he was a charming and charismatic man, but behind closed doors, he was violent towards his family. His son, Hayden, told police that his grandmother dressed his father up in girls' clothing when he was a child. One night, Hayden found a box of his father's where it was full of women's clothing. His father admitted to his son on numerous occasions that he has a fetish for women's clothing, particularly satin clothing. It was said that he couldn't control himself sexually when he was near satin clothing or wearing it. His own son was exposed to this on numerous occasions, seeing his father wearing satin clothing and being sexually aroused. Hayden admitted to the police that at night he could hear his father coming towards his room, the sound of satin dresses swishing, knowing his father was coming to sexually abuse him. This violent sexual abuse went on until Hayden was about 14 years old, 3 times a week, until he was old enough to stand up against his father. Hayden told a story about how one night Harry got so angry that he threw a plate of food at his wife, Hayden's mother, and cut her face open. Hayden, so enraged, grabbed him and beat his father up, telling him to never touch his mother again. From then on, he never touched his mother or Hayden again. Harry Phipps lived into his 80s, dying in 2004, never being investigated for the disappearance of the children. 10 years later, his son died, leaving damning testimony of his father's alleged guilt. Harry Phipps was seen by society as a man who had it all, but he was nothing but a predator, one that was never satisfied. In 1979, near his Castlereagh factory, Harry Phipps allegedly raped a 14-year-old girl. His victim, known as Linda, not her real name, gave an interview to 7 News about her alleged rape by Harry Phipps. Her best friend lived near the factory, and on her way home from her friend's place, she encountered the man she identified as Harry Phipps. He approached the young girl to say hello and said he had seen her around. She noted that he did used to stand on the corner of the road where Castlereagh was. He walked her across the road and kept complimenting her. There was no one around, and he took full opportunity to this, leading her off and then raping her. Afterwards, he blamed the young girl for his actions and that his clothes were now dirty. Linda was more concerned about being home on time and ran off. She was scared to tell her father and being hit by him, so she never told anyone. It would be years until she knew Harry Phipps's name. Going back to Hayden's police interview, Hayden stated that on the day of the disappearance, he was working at the bowling alley. Upon returning home, he was in his cubby house when he saw his father talking to 3 children outside the home. He couldn't hear what they were saying, but watched them as they all walked into the home. Hayden went into the house afterwards to see what was going on, but assumed that the children had left. He heard nothing. But when the police asked him if he had heard gunshots, he said yes, but that Harry was always letting off gunshots, 4 gunshots, that day. But he didn't suspect anything. Later that day, he saw his father loading what looked like surfboard covers into the back of his car. He did not find this unusual, as his father often did this to carry his satin dresses, and then he took off. 2 brothers, Robin and David Harkins, came forward in the early 2010s, claiming that a businessman paid them to dig a deep hole at his Castlereagh factory in North Plympton days after the Beaumonts vanished. The boys got a £1 note each and were told to leave, not thinking anything of it at the time. It wasn't until years later that they realised they might have dug the children's grave when watching a program on the television which names the Castlereagh site and Harry Phipps as a link to the case. This lead prompted the police to perform a search of the factory in 2013, but nothing was found. However, in 2017, a critical error was found when the brothers and investigators re-examined the location of the burial site. It turns out that the boys dug in another area on the site. Archaeological scientist Ian Moffat and a small team conducted a search. Moffat found that with geological data that there was evidence of disturbance in the soil that fit the dimensions of the hole dug by the 2 boys. Armed with this evidence, he took his findings to the police, and a possible investigation was underway. However, after extensive searching, nothing was found once again. In February 2025, a privately funded search led by former South Australian Major Crime Detective Bill Hayes and independent MP Frank Pangallo returned to the old Castlereagh site in North Plympton, long linked to prime suspect Harry Phipps. During this last-ditch effort, excavators uncovered a layer of cement-stabilized sand that forensics geologists believed was laid after 1966, raising hopes it marked a clandestine grave. However, by March 1st deadline, no human remains had surfaced, and the dig was halted when plans for a new housing estate made further excavation impossible. Both Jim Beaumont and Nancy Beaumont lived the rest of their lives under the shadow of unimaginable loss. Their 3 children, Jane, Arnna and Grant, vanished from Glenelg Beach on Australia Day in 1966, and despite decades of investigations, the case remains unsolved. Nancy Beaumont passed away in 2019, having spent over 50 years hoping for answers. Nancy was known to be deeply private in her later years, partly to shield herself from the relentless speculation and media attention surrounding the case. Jim Beaumont died in 2023 at the age of 97. A funeral notice described him as being reunited in heaven with his beloved children. Jim never gave up hope, and those close to the family said he carried the grief quietly but profoundly throughout his life. The couple separated in the early 1970s, but remained united in their longing for closure. Neither lived to see the mystery resolved, and their story is often cited as one of the most heartbreaking aspects of the Beaumont case. As the sun set on Glenelg Beach that Australia Day, 3 innocent lives slipped beyond our reach, leaving behind only footprints in the sand and a family's forever unanswered questions. For more than half a century, Jane, Arnna, and Grant Beaumont have lived on in our collective memory, symbols of childhood stolen too soon and of a community's unwavering hope. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you have any information on the Beaumont children, please contact the South Australia Police